Hello and welcome back to my channel, Art with Lexi. Today we are going to be drawing a tulip in colored pencil. Of course, this is not a hyper-realistic flower. We're going to have fun with it. You can use bright colors, and we're going to focus on doing a simple color gradient and blending. As always, follow along and feel free to pause the video as needed. I'm using a really simple set of Crayola colored pencils. I'm going to use yellow, red, brown, light green, and dark green. You can use whatever colors you want. Most importantly, you need at least 2 colors for the petals. My petals are yellow and red. To start, we need to do some simple outlines of the petals. Now, I've done an illustration here because I'm using yellow for the outline, and it's quite difficult to see the yellow on the paper, especially translating through the camera. If you have 2 colors picked out for the petals, you need to start with the lighter of the 2 colors. Whatever your 2 colors are, start with the lighter of the 2 colors. In addition to this, we need to be conscious to be very light, to use light pressure for these first few steps. So outlining these petals needs to be done lightly. That way when we go over with the blending, it won't show through. We're going to start by drawing the 2 petals that are on the side of the flower. Again, I'm doing this very lightly, so you can see my illustration here. The great thing about doing a flower is that it's nature. So it's not going to be perfect and it's not going to be symmetrical. So don't stress out about making the petals exactly the same. Now we can do the petal that's in the middle. It's kind of like a petal that hasn't quite opened up completely. So it's almost like an M shape. It needs to go from one side to the other. Lastly, we're going to do 2 petals in the back. Again, keep this very light. I have 2 petals, and in my case, the left petal is in front of the right petal. So whichever petal is in front and in back, just keep that in mind for later. Now we can start with the shading. Now, the way that we're going to shade is from dark to light, meaning that we need to go from hard pressure to light pressure. And we're going to try to get a gradient. So you have to slowly lessen up on the pressure as you go. You can see here that I'm doing the petal on the left side first. I'm going to go along the edge, in this case along the inside edge, and I'm pushing down really, really hard. I'm using a lot of pressure, so the color is very, very dark. I'm going to slowly move away from the edge towards the center of the petal. And as I move towards the center, I will slowly use less pressure, less pressure, less pressure until I'm barely touching the paper. And that creates this gradient. So the yellow goes from being very strong on the edge and very, very light until it just fades away towards the middle of the petal. This just comes from controlling the pressure of the pencil on the paper. So from hard pressure to light pressure. And you're trying to get everything in between. So you should incrementally lighten up on the pressure. Slowly, less pressure, less pressure, less pressure. And when you get to the very end where the color fades out, it's like you're barely touching the paper. Now I'm doing the petal here in the back. I'm doing the left petal. Same idea, always from hard pressure to light pressure. Always from dark to light. Now my color fades out towards the middle of the petal. Especially if you have a very light color, you can go quite far. So you can go at least to the middle of the petal or farther. If your color is a little bit darker, you can always use a little bit less, and you'll see when we do the blending that you'll have to come back to it anyway. So try to get this transition from dark to light. You can see that every single petal needs to have this gradient from dark to light, from hard pressure to light pressure. The petals on the sides should be along the inside, going from dark to light, and the petals that are in the middle go from top to bottom. Now, just in case this doesn't come naturally to you, you should hold the pencil as if you were writing. And you want to use the tip of the pencil, not the side of the pencil for shading. This is going to help you get rid of some of the texture and those pencil marks. So use the tip of the pencil, not the side, to do the shading. This will help you get into the grain of the paper and get a smoother transition. Now the next step is to switch to the second color for your petals. In my case, the second color is red. I'm going to do the same process as what I just did before, but going the opposite direction. So in this case, I'm going to start with red first on the left petal, and I'm starting on the far side, the opposite side from where I started with the yellow. Now I'm going to do the same process, meaning I'm going to shade from dark to light. I'm going to go from hard pressure to light pressure. So you can see I work along the edge, pushing down really, really hard, getting it nice and dark as I possibly can. Now I go back and forth and I'm slowly moving in towards the middle. So I get lighter and lighter. I lessen up on the pressure, slowly less pressure, less pressure, less pressure. And you'll get to the point where you're overlapping with that first color, but very, very lightly. So each petal is like its own unit. Each petal, you have one side with the first color going from dark to light, fading towards the middle. Now we have the second color, fading from dark to light towards the middle, and there will be a point where they meet and they overlap. Now what happens once they overlap is you'll have to go back and forth, getting these colors to blend. In my case, yellow is very, very light. It's quite transparent. So I'll actually go over the top of the red, pushing down really, really hard. And what this will do is it will help create a smooth transition. It sort of scrubs and blends that bit of colored pencil so that it's really smooth and that transition is really even. Now, of course, I come back with the red just a little bit so it's not too heavy on the yellow in the middle of the petal. But ultimately, you might have to go back and forth, building up that color. You can always go over a darker color with a lighter color, pushing down hard as the final step to sort of solidify and blend everything together. I'll do another petal here. It's the same process. So I'll actually do a little bit of an outline, trying to get a really clear edge, exactly where one petal ends and the other petal starts. So you can see that I just outline the edge of that petal, and then I do the shading from dark to light, hard pressure to light pressure. So the petal on the back has yellow fading from top to bottom. Now my red fades from bottom to top. Once I have that where they overlap and they meet very lightly, I come back over with the yellow and I use it as a tool to scrub and blend those colors together. Of course, every petal needs this process. So once you do one petal, go ahead and work on all of them. It's always the same steps. You have one color fading from the edge towards the middle. Now you have the second color fading from the other edge towards the middle. And where they meet, you may have to go back and forth, bringing one color up with more pressure, bringing the other color over with more pressure. Ultimately, if you can use that lighter color over the top, pushing down really hard, you'll get a smooth blend. And don't be afraid to push down really hard, especially when you're getting into that final step. The harder you press, the brighter and the bolder your colors will be. And that's one of the reasons that we're doing this class, is to have bright, bold, fun colors. As always, please don't get discouraged if you're finding that this process really isn't as easy as it looks. Art, like everything, takes time and it takes practice. So if you can work on getting this blend and this transition, you'll find that this translates to so many other things. Just give it some time and practice. If your first try doesn't come out great, the beauty of drawing is you can always do it again. The beauty of having a class like this is that you can play the video and try again anytime. The other thing that I want you to notice is that I'm always moving my pencil with the line that I'm shading from. So as I'm moving back and forth, every time I slowly start going lower and lower and lower, and as I'm going lower and lower and lower, I'm using less and less pressure. And this helps get that even fade from dark to light. Now we need to add some shadows. So we have this point here where the petals, of course, are all shaded from one color to the other. I'm going to add a shadow here on this back petal on the left side. So look at the difference from this to this. I'll show you again, from this to this. So you see that extra depth and that darkness where that left petal looks like it goes behind the others, where it goes into the cup of the tulip. I'm going to use brown for my shadows, and this is where you may have to use some of your own expertise. Sometimes you have to try trial and error. So depending on your colors, you may need to use a different shadow color. Usually brown is great for a lot of colors. It's not too dark or overpowering. If you have a really dark color like dark blue or dark purple, you might need to use black as a shadow. Sometimes you can even use a darker version of whatever your second color is. So if I had a really big set of colored pencils, I could use a really dark red as a shadow as well. In my case, I'm using brown, and we need shadows in a few different places. So if you look here, we need shadows anywhere that the petals overlap. So I have these areas kind of outlined so you can see, of course, we need shadows on these back petals where they go down into the cup of the tulip. I need shadows in that middle piece, that middle petal where it goes underneath the side petals. We also do need some shadow on the edge of those side petals, because if the flower is round, it's going to lose light on the back side. And so adding a little bit of a shadow on the sides helps make the flower look a little bit round. It also adds a little bit of depth. You can use a little bit of this shadow color as well, just to lightly define anywhere that the petals overlap. So for example, these back petals, the left petal is in front of the right petal, but they can kind of blend together. It all becomes a little bit muddy and you can't quite tell where one petal stops and the other petal starts. So I lightly define, or I line exactly that definition where one petal starts and the other petal ends. And you can do this in these places that I indicate here. So go ahead and work on adding your shadows. With the shadows, you do want to get them to blend or to kind of fade away into the other colors. Remember that shadows are not lines. You don't just want one dark, harsh line where the shadow goes. You want to actually blend that shadow and make it look like it fades out, or make it look like it's a little bit fuzzy, because that's what shadows really look like in real life. Now we need to work on the stem. So I'm going to start with a light green, and I'm going to outline the stem. You can see that I have an illustration here, since of course it's quite light and difficult to see on the screen. So just outline your stem. It should kind of bulge out or flare out where the stem meets the petals. And then you can add a little leaf, just like I do. So it almost looks like it peels off from the stem and then it folds over. And I'm just giving a really light outline. I'm not doing anything super dark because we're going to layer colors. Once you have the outline, you can go ahead and kind of fill in or color in the stem lightly. So I'm not pushing down very hard. I'm trying to just give a light general covering. On top of this, we will add other colors and shadows. So you don't want to push down as hard as possible because otherwise there's a point where you just can't add more colored pencil on top. Now I'm going to do a little bit of a shadow. There's a shadow in a few places. The first place we need shadow is where the stem attaches to the petals. Okay, I'm doing a little bit of shadow as well along one side of the stem. I'll do some shadow where that leaf sort of peels off from the stem. And then also a little bit of shadow where that stem folds over. Now, as with before, you can use lots of different colors for your shadow. I'm using a dark green. You could use brown as well, and you will see that I actually accentuate these shadows with some brown in the next step. So in the next two steps, this is where you have some chance to get a little creative and you can practice layering different colors to see what the final result is. The great thing about colored pencil is that there's a sort of learning curve with colors, but once you start to master how to layer different colors together, what you end up with is every single color imaginable. And they're all possible depending on how you layer the colors. So in this case, I decided to go ahead and add some brown, and I add a little bit of brown everywhere just because I want to tone down the green a little bit. But I do use the brown quite dark in the shadows, the same places that I used that dark green. Then I go over the top and I give it a little bit of yellow, again to make it interesting, and this also makes the color pop. And then the final step is light green, but I'm pushing down really hard. So the trick with colored pencils, as you learn to layer and build color, is to get to that final step where you're pushing down really, really hard and you're using lots of pressure. The only way to get a really smooth final product with colored pencil is by pushing down hard. So my last step is using that light green, pushing down really hard. And this is the final step to blend and combine all those layers of colors together and to make everything really smooth. Now, again, you can still add colored pencil on top, but there is usually a point where once you've added a lot of wax to the paper, there's just no chance to add more. In this case, I go ahead and I darken the shadows a little bit, but I'm pretty much at the maximum of what I can do. And there you have it. Once you're done with your drawing, of course, go ahead and sign your name because it's your artwork. You worked hard on it. And now you have a beautiful flower to commemorate your hard work, and you've probably learned something as well. You can use these skills for other classes, use it to try and draw something that inspires you, and you'll definitely be able to use these skills in other classes that I teach. If you have any questions, feel free to leave me a comment. Thank you so much for following along with this tutorial. I will be putting out more classes, so make sure you follow me here on YouTube and take a look at my Instagram as well at Lexi Mitchell Artist.